Here we'll talk about the photon and energy of a photon. So what are the photons? Whenever I say photon, what do you imagine in your mind? So you can imagine photon as a light particles, a stream of light particles. The particles, and remember, the light can behave both as a wave or as a particle. But here, whenever I talk about the photon, just imagine this as a particle. So the light, if you think any light has a smallest particle, very, very tiny particles, smallest particles. And that tiny particle we call as a photon. So photons are the light particles, and each particle has a fixed amount of energy, and that energy is given by this equation here, and that we call as the energy of the photon. Now let me explain each term here. So the photon are simply the light particles, and the energy of the photon is given by this equation here, E equals to hf. So what is h here? So E is the energy of a photon, h is a constant, 6.626 times 10 to the negative 23 joule second, and this constant is called Planck's constant. F is the frequency of the light, and also we know that there is a relationship between the frequency and the wavelength. Frequency is simply equal to the c divided by the lambda, and c is the speed of the light, and lambda is the wavelength. That's what I have written. And all of you know that the c, the speed of the light, is the ultimate speed. That is 3 times 10 to the 8 meter per second. Nothing in the universe can have greater speed than this speed. That's the ultimate speed. Okay, so that's how you find out the energy of a photon. So you sometimes see, like, the brightness, if one torch light is more brighter than the another torch light, what does this mean? That means it is shooting more photons than the other. If it is shooting more photons than the other, that means its intensity, or what you call as a brightness, is more compared to the other. So now let me give you another example here. So you can also see energy is equal to h times f. That means higher the frequency is, the higher will be the energy. So the frequency determines what will be the energy, and the frequency is equal to c over lambda. That means a smaller lambda will have higher frequency. That means it will have higher energy. Okay, so you see, a smaller wavelength means higher energy. So here is the electromagnetic spectrum. So this is just for the visible light. If you look at the different colors, the violet, blue, green, yellow, the violet has the smallest wavelength range, and the red has higher. So if I compare these two, this one has a higher wavelength. What does a higher wavelength means? Higher wavelength means a smaller frequency, and a smaller frequency means a smaller energy. So if I compare these two, this one has a smaller energy compared to the violet. Okay, so whenever you need to look at the energy, a smaller wavelength means higher energy, higher frequency means higher energy. That's what I have written down here. All right. And also, now if I'm going to compare between the two electromagnetic spectrum, that is the visible light and the infrared. So for example, this is the entire electromagnetic spectrum here. So here, our eyes are sensitive only to this narrow band of a spectrum. That's the visible range. And to the left, you have UV light, and the UV light has a smaller wavelength. You see here, this one is a short wavelength, and this one has a longer wavelength. So what does the short wavelength means? The short wavelength means higher energy. So compared to the visible light, UV has more energy. Now if I compare visible light and infrared, the infrared has a longer wavelength. That means it does have infrared light has a smaller energy compared to the visible light. So this side, if I go this way, energy is decreasing. So from this side to this side, the energy is decreasing, frequency is decreasing, and the wavelength is increasing this way. You see the short wavelength and the long wavelength. And if you look at the frequency here, the frequency is decreasing this way. All right. So this is it from this video. If you have any question, any comments, write down in the comment section below, and do not forget to like, share and subscribe the channel. Thank you very much.